we need to get down to reality. We need to, as I said, put the rhetoric aside and look at the facts as they actually are. Ukraine is clearly losing the war. The Ukrainian soldiers are suffering in exactly the way that you said. The army, the Ukrainian army is weak and getting weaker. They're being replaced by men who do not want to fight and who aren't able to fight in many cases. Yeah. And the Russians are advancing, and they're going to go on advancing. And we are not going to be able to stop them. So because the Russians, as I said, are tough-minded, hard-headed people, because Putin isn't Hitler. I mean, let's just put that nonsense to one side. Let's talk to him. Let's see whether we can come to some kind of agreement which will save what we can save in Ukraine and which will secure a lasting peace in Europe, because that is the situation. That is the reality now.
Give me your best estimate of what the West will face if we don't accede to reality, if Trump doesn't win and they just perpetuate, Harris perpetuates the current administration, and we keep going down the fiction path. What is going to be the dilemma for the West on that inevitable day when the Ukrainian army collapses?
We're going to have a situation where the Russians will move westwards. We don't know how far westward they intend to go or will go, but they will go there. And they will go there in force. They will go there as an extremely powerful army. And many people in Europe will be extremely worried about that. And if we're not prepared to negotiate, then the danger is, in fact, the certainty is that the hostility in Europe, the mutual suspicion, the fear will crystallize. And we will get into another situation like the one we had during the Cold War, where we had the Russians on the one side, we have the United States and its allies on the other. There's once again permanent tension in Europe. There's permanent instability in Eastern Europe because the Ukraine issue itself has not been resolved. With all of that uncertainty, the United States will have to send hundreds and hundreds of thousands of troops to Europe again, or could find itself obliged to do so. Troops that it doesn't really have, because of course the world has changed and the commitments that the United States faces around the world today are so much greater. In other words, another exhausting drain on American resources. And of course, the alternative to that would be perhaps the United States eventually coming to some kind of deal. But if we wait for that time, all kinds of very dangerous and bad things could happen in the meantime. And of course, the situation in Europe itself would become very dangerous, very stressed. We would have to worry about war all the time in a way that we have not had the need to do for, 30 years now. And societies begin to remilitarize. All the suspicions and all the fears that go with that would come back. So it would be an absolute, complete disaster. It'd be a geopolitical disaster, it'd be an economic and social disaster, and it would be a huge problem, a massive headache for the United States. I really do hope that statesmanship is eventually discovered and we avoid that calamity.
You have so starkly laid out the different visions of what could be, how we could bring this to a merciful end now and actually preserve something for Ukraine and get us back to security and safety and not worrying about war, or we can keep going down the path we're on and we have that much darker view. And you didn't even mention the possibility that it could go into nuclear escalation. That's, I guess, pretty self-evident. So let's just hope and pray, like you said, that we do find some kind of statesmanship somewhere, that finally people pierce through the fog of this self-deception to do something that makes sense while we still can.